Are you ready?
Hello, and welcome to the Whole House Podcast, where you can find home, health, and family all in one place. Our team is comprised of moms from different upbringings and backgrounds, and we each have different passions and giftings and strengths. We each represent a different room, and we all make up the whole house. So grab a cup of coffee and join our overly caffeinated ladies here for the Whole House Podcast.
Hi, welcome to the Whole House Podcast. Today is Kathleen
and Jessica.
And today we're going to talk about working through the seasons of marriage. But first, let me catch you up on what's going on at the Whole House and what you can join us in. On July 16th, we're starting a marriage habits e-course. The event's on our page, the Whole House page on Facebook. You can sign up there. It's still open. And also, this is really exciting, we are doing the Whole House Gathering on September 8th. And there will be limited enrollment because we only want to have about 30 ladies. This is our first gathering, so it's going to be really fun and exciting.
So excited.
And I'll be teaching a little. We'll have some workshops. Jessica will be doing something about health, and she'll probably make us exercise, which will be great fun.
Yay.
And Amory will be doing something, and Lori. So the whole team will be there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So that event will be on the Whole House page also, so make sure you get signed up right away. And something else, we are partnering with our brother podcast, Decent Christian Talk, to bring Juan Arturo to our area, to Bridgeport, West Virginia. So if you are local, it's a free event. Juan Arturo is a Christian songwriter. He's written a lot of songs that you are probably familiar with. And he's doing a project called the Closure Project. Juan was, in his childhood, was abused and neglected and went through the foster care system. And when he got older, he decided he needed to have closure and forgive his mother. So he did a documentary about this. So he'll be showing that documentary at this event, plus talking a little bit and singing. So that'll be a lot of fun. So that event is also on our page. So that's what's coming up on the Whole House. And now we will get right into our topic, working through the seasons of marriage. And since I've been talking, I'm going to let Jessica talk a little bit.
All right, guys. So working through the seasons of marriage. As I was on my way here, I knew the topic, so I was really trying to focus on what I wanted to speak about. And this is something that I am currently going through with my own marriage. I think first of all, I've been married for 16 years. So those 16 years have not always been in the same season. Right. We've gone through different steps in our lives, and I don't think that I was self-aware enough back in the early stages of marriage to realize that there would be those different seasons and how we actually are supposed to work through them instead of fighting our partner, fighting our husband in those different seasons. So I think that as I've gotten older, I've made adjustments to that. I now realize that different times in our lives are going to be different. Our marriages are going to be different. I will start by saying that, I just started my own business. My husband works a lot, and it's been a different dynamic for our family. And I've been getting frustrated because we can't even find the time to actually talk to one another, let alone plan something together. We have different things going on even when we're home.
Right.
There's chores, there's this, there's that, there's taking care of the children. So I've been a little bit frustrated. There's been frustration in the sense that I haven't been able to spend time with him.
Yeah.
So I can see that he's a little bit frustrated with that. We've been a little bit snippy with each other, and I know that's just because 1,000 things are going on. And let's say 10 years ago, even in our marriage, I would have taken it personally.
Right, yeah.
I would have harbored that.
Yeah. You wouldn't have shaked the dust off.
I wouldn't have shaked the dust off, and I would have been like, what is going on? And I think that this is when we can become problematic in our marriage. We can then start harboring, maybe, I don't want to say hatred, but we just start bitterness can come into play. We can not talk about it. We can think or assume that maybe something else deeper is going on that it's truly not. Maybe we think that he's seeing somebody else, or he's engaging in something else that he shouldn't be engaging in, that's taking time away from me. So I would have done that. I have done that before. Honesty hour.
We all have.
Yes. So I never realized that there would be different stages of our marriage. And let me just say that children have different stages of their childhood, which affects the different seasons of your marriage.
Definitely.
We're in the teenager stage. Teenagers are always around. They're always up late. We can't monitor maybe their nighttime routine, or when they're going to sleep, or this or that. So it's hard for my husband and I to spend time together.
Right, because when the kids are staying up late,
right,
when they're teens, or have part-time jobs, and you're waiting for them to come home, and that changes the whole dynamic of your household. It's not like when you're putting the kids to bed at 8:30 and then you have that chunk of time together. Yeah, that doesn't happen when you have teenagers, because I don't know about your teenagers, but mine were always, and still, the ones that are living at home are still, at nighttime they want to talk.
Yes.
And
yes,
even last night, Hunter came home from an event, and I'm in my bed. I just finished reading a book, so I'm like falling over asleep, and he's talking, and I honestly don't know everything he said. Because
no, and that's
like after 9:30, my brain just shuts down.
Same thing happened to me the other day. I was exhausted, and I'm like, I'm going to go to bed, and my daughter's like, but I want to talk to you. And I'm like, but it's 10:30.
Right.
Mia, I'm tired.
Right.
So that we did. We're missing out on that chunk of time. We used to put the kids to bed. We would have that time to catch up on our day, to say, how was your day? Mm-hmm. How was this or how was that? We would plan out. And now we're just struggling. I can't even remember to text him if I need something. You know what I mean? Right. We're just on the go constantly. The kids are constantly needing something. So this is a different season of our marriage that we're having to adjust to. Mm-hmm. And we're having to do that together, but separate. So it's kind of weird, if that makes any sense.
And it is, it's a lot about mindset.
Yes.
Like you were saying, we can make assumptions. We can make assumptions that, I'll just give for instance, when my husband gets up in the morning, he gets out his tablet and he's checking business and stocks and everything in that realm of the world. He's always really into checking all that stuff, and I can assume that because he's doing that he doesn't want to talk to me, or that he's not interested in having a conversation with me, which is the farthest thing from the truth. The truth is he's always done those sorts of things, but now that the kids are almost all out of the house and grown up, I'm noticing it because I'm not busy doing something with the younger kids.
Packing lunches or whatever.
I'm not doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So we can have those assumptions because we're in a new season totally. I mean, I homeschooled kids for 21 years. Yeah. And I'm not homeschooling this year. And all of my kids but one have moved out. And my house is essentially, I've said this before, it's a giant revolving door. Yeah. Like people just show up at any time like, oh, we're going to come over, especially in the summer, which is great. I'm not saying it's wrong or bad. Right. Or it's just like, oh, we're going to come swimming, or oh, we're going to come do this, or oh, I'm just going to come over and that sort of thing. And I want those times to continue. But often what happens is, if I'm not careful, then I'll be spending time with all of my kids and not my husband.
Right, and it reminds me a lot of that podcast that we just aired not long ago, the transition in motherhood. There's transitions in your marriage, and that is just another thing you have to adapt to. We as women, and I'm sure it's the same as for men, I can't speak on their behalf, but we're constantly having to evolve.
Exactly.
So in different seasons of your marriage, there's different transitions where you then have to transition to a different way that you speak to your husband or communicate with your husband, or this or that, so that you can have that connection still, but it's always going to be different. It's never going to stay the same.
Exactly.
And nobody ever tells you that when you first get married and you may be in the newlywed stage and it's lovey-dovey 24 hours a day. Nobody ever talks about, hey, 2 years from now, when you add a child to this, you're going to have to transition. You're going to have to evolve. You're being a different season of your marriage. You have to work through that, because I think a lot of these seasons is where people throw in the towel. They throw up their hands. They maybe don't need or know that they need to evolve, or they don't want to.
Right, or they don't get support or education from somebody who's older than them, because Jessica was saying you've been married 16 years?
Yes.
And I've been married for 33 years. So I can tell her things that have happened along my journey so that she can be prepared for what's next.
Right.
Because right now she's where I was not so many years ago, I had a house full of teens.
Yep.
And it was just kids going to work and kids going to play practice and, those sorts of things. It was just a constant thing. And now it's a constant thing in another way. And I think when you were referring to when you first have a child, like you've been married for 2 years and then you have a child. And for women especially, we assume that our husbands will just become mind readers.
Right.
Like, didn't you know that the child needed a diaper change? Or didn't you know this? And here we are, probably the main caregiver for this little one. And hubby comes home and we're like, didn't you know that they need this or that? Or I need a break or this? And no, they don't.
Right.
And if we continue that path down the assuming that they can read our mind, then it's going to result in disaster. Yeah,
because we have different instincts.
Exactly.
We have different instincts, so he can't assume that his instincts, and like the instincts, the motherly instincts with the I can remember I used to worry that my kids would go hungry whenever my husband was watching them, because I wasn't sure that he would pick up on the hunger cues or have that instinct to only feed them when he was hungry. Exactly. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, because it's just different. And that's what I can say. I spoke about it on a live on Facebook when we were talking about something. Assuming in the early stages of my marriage could have ruined it.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, it caused so many unnecessary arguments where I would assume that I knew what he was thinking.
Exactly.
And then I would shut myself down. And then it would cause this big thing that never even needed to happen. An argument, and I should have just been like, is this what you meant? Or this is how I feel. Should have opened up. And I know a lot of people think, well, talking things out. No, talking things out makes the world go round, makes a marriage go round. You cannot have a go through these seasons of marriage if you're not communicating on some level. Right.
Well, and it just like I was on a panel for something else the other night, and we were talking to these younger ladies about how much, when we started this particular group, how much we had really long conversations. And they were astounded because in today's society, people just don't have these conversations as much as we used to when I was younger, because we didn't have social media, we didn't have all of these things.
Now they communicate in 140 characters.
Right.
You're limited.
Yeah, I was just reading about that this morning in that brain book I'm reading. Like, we've reduced ourselves to 140 characters, and honestly, that's not good for our brain. Yeah. And what is better for our brain is to have a conversation, go back and forth and hear what the other person has to say, because that does something in our brain instead of just reading a tweet or a text or and when you have a conversation with your husband, you can see their face.
Yes.
And you can pick up those cues from their demeanor instead of just stop and get some milk at the store, or you know what I
Right.
mean? That's not really a conversation.
No.
That might be something that's very convenient in this day and age, but it's not a conversation.
No.
And one of the things I wanted to talk about when you're talking about the assumptions is when we assume something and we're not really getting the real cues or asking the real questions, we can begin to get into escapism, where it's just like we shut down, first of all, and maybe we start pursuing something else to fill that void of that attachment with our spouse. And that escapism, it doesn't even have, the thing is, it doesn't even have to be something bad. I'm not saying escape as drink and do drugs.
Right.
It can be as simple as starting your own little home business, and there's nothing wrong with that if it's for the right reasons. But if it's to escape, I'm really hurting because I feel like my husband doesn't love me anymore, so I'm not going to respect him anymore, and I'm going to do this instead.
Yeah.
And then every time he comes through the door, you're like, honey, I got to go, see you later.
Yeah.
I've got this meeting, I've got this, I've got that, and like I was saying to Jessica before we started, we're in this new season that we actually, on the weekends, Jerry and I will sit down with our schedules and say, okay, on this day we're going to go for a bike ride, and on this day we're going to do this. We have to actually put it on the schedule, because if we don't, it won't happen. And that's because of the season of life that we're in.
And we need to get there.
Right.
We put everybody else on the schedule but ourselves.
Right.
That's where we are at this present moment.
Right. And that's really difficult, because then somebody feels like they're losing out.
Yes.
But I can say honestly that your kids will actually benefit long run, because 10 years from now, when your kids are thinking, what did mom and dad do in this situation? Well, no matter what, they put their relationship first.
Right.
And they put it above ours, even though we got frustrated with them. I have my kids come back to me and tell me all kinds of things that I never even thought were impacting them at the time at all. I just thought those were the things that we were doing.
True.
So we don't know. And it's hard to start a new season. It's hard to start that season of, like you started your business and now your time is divided. So you can't just say, oh, let's get up tomorrow and just go to the outlets. Or,
Right.
you know what I mean? You've got to schedule it, and it's hard.
It is hard. It is. And I'm so apt about working through this season because, like I said, we have teenagers. And I think it's really important for you to position yourself in a way that when your children leave the nest, you still have a relationship with your husband.
Exactly. That's the season I'm in. I keep telling my husband that, our relationship is still really important, and we're going to have to really work to spend time together, or we won't, because we're both project people. And we're both very work-oriented. And if he starts a project and I start a project when he has a day off, then the day's over, and we just look at each other like, oh, we haven't even talked to each other.
And you hear it more and more, and you hear of people splitting up, and they're like, we never saw that coming. They were together
Especially
for 40
in my age
years.
group.
They were
Yeah.
together for 40 years. Well, I think that they didn't prepare for that season of their marriage. And then when their kids left, they had nothing tying them back together.
Right, and they're just sitting there either looking at each other,
Right.
or they're never together at all. They're constantly just separate.
Or they have succumbed to that escapism.
Yes, and if you succumb to that, then it just grows and grows and grows, because you feed a temptation and you're more tempted.
Right.
And if you feed, denying that temptation, then that temptation is going to lessen and lessen and lessen. But today's society tells us that you can have it all, you can do whatever you want, and everything will work out perfectly.
Right.
And that is not true.
That is not true, and that's not something that we should fall into even thinking about ourselves, because then let's talk about this in a marriage. if you have your expectations set high for yourself and you're not living up to everything you think, I should be the perfect mother, I should be the perfect wife, the house should be spotless, I'm this or that, you're going to project your feelings of failure onto your spouse.
Right.
That's eventually going to happen.
Exactly.
And they may not even have any idea of where that is even coming from because they don't have those expectations for you.
Right. And that's why it's important to have those conversations.
Right.
Because I learned a long, long time ago, one of the things that my husband appreciates is when he comes home that things in the house are in order. And it's funny because I would have a really great day of homeschooling and things would just be science equipment everywhere, just be a mess. And he would come home and say, "Sal, you didn't get anything done today." And I would be like, "No, you don't understand. I got so much done. It was such a great school day."
Right.
And then he would come home on a day where we just spent the day cleaning and didn't get any school done. And he would be like, "Wow, you got so much done today." So our perceptions were totally, totally different. So I had to give a little and he had to give a little. And I would explain to him, if you come home and the microscope is still on the table, that's a good thing. That means we got the science in, we did something. And then I would have to give a little and say, "Oh my goodness, I need to make sure that I clean as much up as I can because of his expectations." So you need to find out what the expectations are in the marriage and whose job is what. I think that people need to have those sorts of conversations.
Absolutely.
Because we assume, like, well, my mom did it this way, or my dad did it this way, or my dad always took out the trash. And maybe your husband's like, well, my mom always took out the trash, And that makes you have more peace if you know what the expectations are. So I think it's important when you're moving into a new season, you establish those expectations and discuss them.
Absolutely.
And actually, if you have to, depending on your personality, if you have to, write them down, put them on the calendar, do whatever you need to do that's going to make your home run more peaceful and know what the expectations are.
No, I completely agree. I'm at that stage in my life where it's not on my schedule. It doesn't exist in real life.
Yes, I know. Me too. And I always ask my husband when he has a day off, I say, what are your plans for today, or what would you like to see happen today? Because sometimes he'll say, if he's had a really long week of 10 to 10 shifts, he'll say, "I'm basically going to do nothing and just sit here and rest. I don't really want to do anything today." Then I'll be like, "Okay, well, I'm going to go to my office and write, and I'm going to go do my regular work day." Yeah. But if he says, "I'm going to work on this," or "we should go out to lunch," or, well, then I'll do those things. And I have to be more flexible, which is really hard for me.
I know.
I don't like to be flexible. It's just like, I don't know if you saw, my sister and I did a live, and I was like, we're just winging it. We don't know what. And then I said, "Where's my notes?" And she's like, "Wait, you can't have notes and be like winging it." I said, we're just being random today. And I had notes for winging it. That's how I am. I have notes for everything.
Notes for winging it. That sounds about right. That's pretty funny.
Because I'm just, there are certain personalities that just fly by the seat of your pants. And my husband is one of those people that already has everything kind of planned out in his mind. But I don't know what's in there.
Yeah.
So I have to ask him, because I'm one of those people that already has it all on my calendar and on my schedule.
Yeah, and I liked how you said about how you guys are project oriented. My husband and I are the same. And we don't have to divide a lot of attention to one another in order to know kind of where we are. Because we come from a long-distance relationship, so we never were connected in that way. We can venture off. But then at the end of the day, we always circle back around to each other. And I just want to say how important, and I know this is hard for a lot of people, you have give and gave, and you're just at your wit's end at the end of the day. It is important to look at your spouse and say, what do you need?
Exactly.
And to actually listen to them.
Right.
when they tell you that they need something.
Right. And if you already know
Yes.
what they need, because you know you've been married to this person for 33 years. For instance, last night I went to Jessica's blast class, which blasted me. And it was so much fun. So I'm driving home, and while I was driving home, I'm listening to praise music and I'm singing along, and I'm thinking, okay, when I get home, I'm going to take a bath with Epsom salts, and I'm just going to rest and relax and everything. It's been a busy day. So then I get home, and my husband's home, which I wasn't sure he was going to be home. And he instantly was like, hey, why don't we go sit out on the back deck and drink a cup of coffee? And in my mind, I'm like, and he had a plan. He had a plan. And so, but I just knew that
We're the same person. But go ahead.
it was the right thing to do.
Right.
So I drank a cup of decaf with him on the back porch, and we just kind of discussed our day and said what was happening with some of the kids and how work was and all that sort of stuff.
But right, and you had to, if you knew that he needed that,
Yes.
you had to be flexible.
Right.
And allow
it's
yourself
so
to do
hard.
that. It is. Because just imagine if you knew that he was going to say, or you knew that he was going to say that, so you never even asked. You were trying to avoid it. You know, then
right.
What would he assume? And it just turns into this big thing. And you just have to surrender yourself to the needs at the end of the day if you're just trying to work through it.
Right.
And I walked home from my classes last night and just knew that my husband was about ready to lose it. He was doing dishes. He had been,
Right.
he's really been responsible for dinner since I teach evening classes. He had cut the grass, and I just knew he needed to vent.
Yeah.
So I asked him, I was like, what do you need me to do? Mm-hmm. Do you need me to load the dishwasher? He just needed me to stand there and listen to him complain for 5 minutes. And I have totally been on that other spectrum of that.
Right,
when he's walked home from...
So you have the apron on.
Right?
This kid did this, and that kid did that.
That is exactly what it is. And I know that he never would even ask, let's say 10 years ago, because he knew that that's what was coming his way.
Right.
But we have to surrender to that, to their needs, and I think that just helps move those seasons along. Even if you have no idea what you're doing, at least ask what your partner needs from you.
Well, and that's a really good point, because that's what we teach in the Empowered to Connect training for these kids for hard places. Instead of asking them, why are you misbehaving? Why are you doing that? Ask them, what do they need?
Yeah.
And sometimes the kids don't know because they don't have any awareness of themselves, and you have to tell them, well, maybe you need to have a snack, or maybe you need a drink, or maybe you need a break. But I think that our spouses are self-aware enough that they can say...
Well, we hope so, anyway.
We hope so. Do you need a snack? Do you need a drink? Or a nap? Where's your blankie?
Yeah.
Where's your blankie?
Yeah. No, and you do. I mean, you have to ask, and then you have to be sincere. I mean, you can't just ask what they need and then blow them off.
Right.
You know? And if it's something...
I'm going out with the girls.
Right, if it's something that they need from you, if they need that 5 minutes for you to listen to them talk, or my husband enjoys me listening to how his day at work was.
Right.
I
ask that too.
He wants me to listen and actually absorb how his day was, what he did, what he dealt with, who he dealt with.
Right.
And
that he had to fire. That's what I
had to argue with.
I had to fire this person, and I didn't like doing it because And
then I have to be sincere and present, which I am working on. I am not very good at it. He just said on my way here, he's like, I'm going to pick up that sticker I ordered for you. I was like, you ordered me a sticker? He's like, I totally told you that. And I was like, oh man, I got to work harder on listening when people are talking to me.
I said that to my husband last night. He's talking about something, and I was like, wait a minute. Rewind, I missed out.
I know.
I don't know what you were saying, and I need to process what you were saying, because I don't know what you were saying.
Right.
I know. I'm like that too, and it's just not good. I need to be more present, and I'm working on that. And because the dynamic has changed. I don't have, unless my grandkids are over here, I don't have toddlers hanging on my legs going, and have that excuse, well, I need to get them a drink or I need to do that. And for some reason, I could listen then, even when I was doing something like that. But now it's like it's just that person and me. It's just my husband and me. Focus, pay attention, instead of thinking, well, next I'm going to.
Next on my list of things to do. And that's, you know, like with that self-awareness in those different seasons, you have to be willing to adjust. You said the word flexible. You have to be willing to grow. You have to be willing to say, okay, you know, I'm failing in this department of paying attention. I need to work on that myself. I can't just think, well, you need to tell me less things, you know. We need to have less conversations. That's not going to work today. My brain is done. It's shut off. I need to adapt. I need to be flexible in the way that I concentrate. I need to be disciplined in working forward.
And it is a discipline. And that's the thing that is really such a fallacy in our culture today. And, you know, say yes to the dress and all this kind of stuff. It's like, oh, marriage is this wonderful, flowery, magical thing. And once you get... If you have a huge wedding, then you're going to have a successful marriage, which is a lie.
Yes, it is.
You don't even have to have a huge wedding. You can just, you know, like my eldest daughter got married here in our front yard, and she has a very successful marriage. But the reason that people have successful marriages is because they do what we're doing. They talk about it. They work on these things. They, you know, like last night when I walked inside, my husband's outside waiting for me on the deck, and I'm biting my tongue. Like, help me, Lord, help me, Lord, help me, Lord. Because it's not that I didn't want to spend time with him. That wasn't the issue at all. I had already just been like, I had a long day, I'm shutting down, I exercised, I'm tired, I'm going to take a bath and go to bed. You know what I mean? And I had to be flexible, change my train of thought, change what I was going to do. And we need to be willing to sacrifice on that front if we want to have a successful marriage. Because a successful marriage isn't our husband is giving, and we're just the taker. If we think of it that way, then we're never going to have a successful marriage. It's got to be both. We women, which my sister and I did a whole podcast on that will be coming out, we want love, they want respect. And if we don't get love, then we don't respect them. And if they don't get respect, then they act unloving towards us, and we're trying to figure out what's going on.
Right.
What's going on? So one way that we can respect our husbands is to be flexible. And it says in Ephesians 5:33 in the Amplified version, where it gives all that list of things that women need to be, is we need to be adaptable.
Yep.
And God must have known, well, he created us, so he knew that women are the people who don't want to adapt. We're the ones that like, wait, let's do it my way.
Some of us, yes. Yes. But you know, he has to adapt with his love to us also.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You know, so I think that's just a shining example of how to do that.
Right.
So... yeah, I mean, I think that I get frustrated, and I know that you have a whole nother podcast coming up on modern feminism, don't you? Mm-hmm. Yeah, about how you don't have to be flexible, about how you don't have to give, about how it's okay to receive, and that will fill your cup.
Right.
But what happens when you're not filling your other half's cup, you know? Then what happens? So we as a society are taught that it's okay to take, and not be flexible enough to give a little bit of what another person needs.
Right.
And I see the frustration in that, and I've seen a lot of marriages end on that note. You know, because they are just taking. Maybe their husband stops giving because they're tired of you taking, and they are not giving anything back. So then that's when you see marriages fail sometimes, and it does. It doesn't mean that you're weak as a woman if you give your husband what he needs.
Exactly. I was trying to find a quote in this. Ooh, here it is. I found it.
Yay.
This is from The Proper Care and Feeding of Marriage by Dr. Laura Schlesinger. I love saying her last name. Schlesinger.
I would not enjoy saying that.
You may be wondering which came first, the chicken, feminism, or the egg, male selfishness and immaturity. I believe the answer is feminism. From the very first day that the feminine mystique hit the bookstands, feminism did not focus on equal pay for equal work, but on how marriage, husbands, men in general, and children in specific were the enemies and the oppressors of true womanhood. And I think, like you said, we're going to do a whole podcast on this, but I think it's something that needs to be mentioned over and over and over again, because like modern feminism, you want to say the second wave, the third wave, some people say we're in the third wave. The aim of it is not to get equality for women, is to slam the whole foundation of family. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's doing. And what it does is it produces divorce, it produces broken families, it produces dysfunction. So if you want to pursue it all and have it all, and you want to be a feminist in the true sense of modern feminism, then expect to lose a lot, not gain a lot.
No, and I've seen it, and I've heard it with my own ears. And then you're over here trying to work through those seasons of your life, trying to give your husband what he needs, and you're feeling bad about yourself because what you're hearing, what you're seeing is making you think that you are lesser of a person, or you're giving up part of yourself to give to this other person who doesn't deserve for you to give them that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But that's your husband.
Right.
So let me use an example. My greatest joy is to cook for my family. I love to be in the kitchen. So when I hear other people say, well, I'm not going to stand in the kitchen for no man or this or that. And I've heard it. I've heard it. And I'm just like, well, that brings me joy.
Right.
And it instantly takes me back to both sets of my grandparents. My grandmother got up every single day and made my grandfather a home-cooked breakfast. Mm-hmm. And he would sing to her. They would dance in the kitchen. She was feeding him. He was feeding her. Exactly. In a different sense of with love, with attention. They spent that time in the kitchen. He would say, what's cooking good looking every day? I remember that. What's cooking good looking? And she would just smile and she'd be frying those eggs. And that was a different time back then. But there's nothing wrong with that's what he needed. That's what she knew that he needed. So she gave him that every day of her life.
That's amazing.
You know what I mean?
Love that.
And it didn't make her any less of a person or any less valuable because she was standing in the kitchen and doing those things for her. So I hate how that gets twisted. That
I do too.
If you succumb to a man's requests, that makes you lesser than, or that you should resist.
Right. And what's interesting about that is the same women who say that go out into the workforce. Nothing wrong with going out into the workforce. I'm not talking about that. But will succumb to everybody else's authority. Everybody else's authority.
Yeah.
And if you read Ephesians 5 in its entirety, everybody always just sticks on that, wives, be submissive to your husbands. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm never doing that.
Right.
You go back a few verses, and it says to the fellow Christians, be subject, be submissive to one another in Christ.
Yes.
So it's for all of us. And what that really means is be flexible, be adaptable. What you were saying is see what other people need. And those same women who say, I'm not cooking for a man, or I'm not cleaning up a house. And even I see a lot of, unfortunately, young married women who say that. Like they get married, they wanted to get married, they wanted to have a family, and then they take this stance, well, I'm not cleaning up the house, I'm not cooking the food, I'm not doing all of these things that involve having a family because I just don't want to.
Right.
Well, and that's sad because the same people will go out and just meet everybody else's needs.
Yeah.
Like, you need this, you need me to come and do this for you, you need me to serve in this ministry. And I'm talking about Christians here. I'm not talking about non-Christians. I'll come and serve in this ministry. And really, your focus, God, your husband, and then your children. That's the way it's set. That's the hierarchy.
Yes.
And that's the way it should be. And I can't tell people how to run their home. I'm not saying if your husband loves to cook, don't let him cook.
Yeah, no,
I'm
exactly,
saying
yeah.
Find out what's, like you're saying, find out what's needed. Like I said, I had to change the way that I handled keeping the house because of my husband's expectations. And he's still.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That does not mean that he has his thumb on you, suppressing you at all.
I love seeing his face when he says, like, when he comes in.
Absolutely.
And even if I just, like, cleaned a little and sprayed some Febreze and wow,
I know. Yeah. But that's the respect aspect of that. Yeah. It's not succumbing to his requests or he's the ruler of the house. It's showing him that you respect him in that manner.
Yes.
Therefore, I look forward to that podcast because I think that a lot of people can benefit from that ratio. It's a ratio.
Right.
It's a numbers.
Right.
You give me 50%, I'm going to give you 50%. Right. If you give me 10%, I'm not giving you 90% to fix that gap. We're going to be in the negative somewhere.
Let's get it now.
I fake it till I make it. But no, and I think that's very important. And I think as a mother raising a daughter, I never heard my mother say, I have to do this for your dad.
Right.
It was, I'm going to do this for your dad. And I make my daughter self-aware enough to know, you know what? I don't need your dad to do this. But this makes your dad feel good. Right. We're going to let your dad do this. It's not that I'm weaker and I can't do it myself.
Exactly.
But this makes your dad feel his purpose in our household. So we're going to let your dad do it. And we're going to pat him on the back while he does it.
Yep.
And we're going to say, good job. And you're going to see him smile. And you're going to see the way that he turns that into a love towards me.
Right. And you're going to see you have a superpower.
Right. That's key. You give a little and it's like, oh.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
It's
so
crazy.
I am raising her in that aspect. Your dad's not making demands. Mm-hmm. Your dad and I have a partnership. That's what he needs for me to fill his cup. And I'm totally willing to pour it out because I love him and it's love based.
Right. And love is not just some gushy feeling that you get. You know, we get this feeling when we meet the guy. Like I was in college when I met Jerry and we were both 19. We were young. And of course there's gushy feelings there. But love for real is not that gushy feeling. That's an emotion. And that emotion comes and goes.
Absolutely.
And if we rely on that emotion to treat our husbands like, okay, I feel like being nice to you now. Yeah. Today I don't feel like being nice. No, we cannot run our marriage like that. It can't be that way.
We don't run our lives like that. We don't, hopefully, run our lives based on our emotions.
Right.
You can't expect to do that with your marriage either.
Right.
We run our lives based on doing the right thing, you know?
Right.
So that's what you have to do in your marriage. So no, I totally, and maybe my grandmother rolled her eyes sometimes as she was flipping those eggs. I'm going to say she probably did, but she still did it every day.
Right. Well, it's just like, you know, you think if your kids need food, then you're going to fix them food. And some days, you're going to roll your eyes because you're frustrated with something that just happened or something they just did or whatever, but you're still going to do it. So I think that's a really good point. Like, that's the way we run the rest of our lives. We don't say, hey, baby, I'm not changing your diaper because I don't feel like it right now. You know?
No. You just do it because it needs done.
Right.
No, I totally agree. And I think that that's important. And again, I think it's an important example to the youngers going into a marriage, our daughters or whatever, to make sure that we set them up not expecting what they may have envisioned or what they're seeing on TV or what they're seeing. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, they're either showing the very good things in this mystical sense of this is what marriage is, a fairy tale, or they're showing the polar opposite where it's completely dysfunctional, or you're reading tabloids, or these people are having an affair. So our children aren't seeing any medium balance of what it actually is.
Exactly. And they need to see that.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to be an example for them even when we don't feel like it. Because like I said, with my older kids coming home, I've got 2 daughters married, a son married, and 1 daughter who's engaged to be married. And so they are doing things. I watch them, and they're doing things very similar to the way that I did things. I see them having conversations or planning family outings, and I think, oh my goodness, they're doing things exactly the way that we did things. And often when our kids are young, we're just trying to make it through the day. We're not thinking, hey, my kids are watching me. I need to be paying attention to what I'm saying, what I'm doing, how I'm spending my time. We're just trying to, survive. And then you see them later. Well, you will see yours later. And then you'll be like, wait a minute. They say that exactly the same way I say that.
Yeah.
They handle that the same way I handle that. In fact, my daughter Amory and I, our personalities are already very similar. So when we do something together, it's like we can finish each other's sentences. We know what each other's going to do next or say next. And she handles her family life very similar to the way that I brought her up. And Audrey's the same. And Anya's just got a 5-month-old. So far, yeah, it's hard to, she's just navigating that for the first time. She's just trying to get
through the day.
Sleep.
Yeah. No, and I think that, we say this with every aspect of parenting, but they're paying attention to everything that you do, and your relationship with your husband and your marriage is no different.
Right.
And you see that a lot of the times. If there's respect there, they have respect in their own marriage. If it's okay to be disrespectful to one another in your marriage, your kids will grow up and think that that's okay.
Exactly.
And then it creates a cycle of dysfunction. It creates a cycle that will be generational.
Right. Just like the Bible verse says, that they will be blessed to the 4th generation or cursed to the 4th generation. And that's not some sort of weird chant that people say. It's just like, it just happens.
Absolutely.
So...
And I've been very blessed to have good examples of marriage with my parents and with his parents and my grandparents, and everybody's been pillar examples. So I hope that my children not only see me, but they see their grandparents, and even if you're in a mixed family or what's it called when you're integrated, a blended family. Mm-hmm. Start there.
Right.
Don't carry over what may have happened in your last marriage into your new marriage, or even if your kids are older. It's never too late to be an example for them.
I saw my mom do that. My mom did that because my early childhood was not great. My dad was an alcoholic, and I won't go into all of that. But when my mom, she got remarried to Bud, who was a military man, and that had a lot of bearing on my childhood. And my mom became a Christian, then it was like you just took a coin and you flipped her over, because all of a sudden her emphasis became, I want to have a strong family, I'm going to do strong family things, and our life completely changed overnight. Like, first of all, my mom went a little radical. We had no TV. She ground her own grain. She made her own granola. I mean, she did all these things, and we went to church regularly. We did Bible study. It's like night and day.
Yeah.
And so I saw that. It's possible. If you've had a bad marriage, or this is your second marriage, and you're just thinking, well, wait a minute, these ladies already have had all these years of marriage, and I'm just starting over again. It's okay.
Yeah.
Start from where you are.
Absolutely.
Start today. You don't have to be married for 16 years or 33 years. If you just got married.
Got married again.
Right. Just got married again, or you're going to get married, start now.
Yeah.
Start right now.
It's never too late. It's never too late. And your kids will see that distinction between the first marriage that maybe didn't work out and the second one that maybe did.
Right. I definitely saw the huge distinction, and just the night and day between my mom. All of a sudden we're doing prayer and Bible study at the table every morning, and those things were really important to her, just like that, overnight.
Absolutely. So no, it's never too late. And it's, you're always an example to your children, even if you're in a bad situation, even if your marriage is horrible right now. And you say, you know what, I want to fix this.
Right.
Let's fix this. Let's start from here. Fix it.
And don't wait for your husband to take the first step.
No.
You have to take the first step yourself.
Absolutely. And even if it doesn't work out, you can say that you tried,
Right. And the thing is, don't just take one step.
No, because I don't want to sit here and paint a picture that everything always works out, because sometimes it just doesn't.
You might take one step and be like, I really said something nice to my husband when he got home from work today.
And it didn't work out.
And so I quit.
Yeah.
No, don't do that.
No.
Especially if you've already had the habit of not having conversations, or you already have the habit of saying something because you're manipulating the situation. Sometimes we do that, women.
Sometimes we really do that.
So if you already have that habit, your husband may not believe the first time you try to do something nice.
Yeah.
You're
especially if it's completely foreign.
Right.
They may think that there's some sort of intention behind it that there's not there. So open up and talk about it and say, hey, listen, I know things aren't going the way that we really had envisioned them going. So I'm going to be working on this.
Right.
I see that maybe there's a need here, so this is where that's coming from. This is the intent behind the change in my attitude, or the change in this. I don't want something. I'm not saying that I expect anything back right at this point. Maybe then it will change the dynamic of our situation. And I wanted to bring up one more thing that I feel is very important. When we're praying, it can feel very selfish to pray for ourselves. So our husbands may not be praying for what they actually need if you have a praying husband, because it can feel very selfish to say, hey, I need this, I need that, I need to work on this, I need to work on that. As a wife, I feel that it's very important when I'm doing my daily prayer and meditation to pray for my husband where I see him struggling.
Yes, I think that's extremely important, because the thing is, guys are, they're designed to, I don't want to say, well, I'm saying rule and reign, but I mean like conquer the world.
Yeah.
And they can feel defeated in areas if things aren't working out. Because we're not designed to conquer the world. We're designed to nurture the world. And whenever they're failing in areas or struggling in areas, they're not necessarily going to bring it up to us, and they're not necessarily going to be praying for themselves in that area. So we have to pray for them, and we have to continually lift them up in prayer and use scripture. Don't just be like, bless them, bless them, bless them.
Right.
Because the word is full of power.
Right.
And God says it will accomplish what he sets it out to do. So when you actually open your Bible and you're praying, Lord, let my husband see the height and the depth and the width of your love. Let him know that you're for him and not against him. Let him know that you have anointed him for the task set before him. And you're praying these powerful word prayers, then they're going to have power, and they're going to make a difference in their life, and they're going to feel it. I know sometimes my husband has said things to me like, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Thank you for praying for me. Like, one of them was he had to have a double hernia surgery. He does not do well with not being able to do things.
Yes.
So he was really, really struggling with that, taking time off with work. And I'm telling you, I was like literally pounding on the door of heaven. Like, you've got to help him. Don't let the recovery be too bad, because he was hearing horror stories. And this is not about me. This is about God. I just kept praying and praying and praying. And he literally had very little pain and recovery. And he was like, boom. He said, I know this is because you prayed for me. I know that's the only reason, because I've talked to other people and they were off their feet and they were in pain and they couldn't do anything. He may have pushed it a little too far, but that's my husband.
And you don't even have to let them know that you're doing it.
Oh, no, you don't have to.
And then when they say, oh, well, you don't have to take credit for that either. Because like you said, it's not you, it's God first and foremost.
Right.
But you don't even have to say, well, I whispered a prayer that you would change your temper or whatever. You don't even have to mention it.
It's all because of praise.
It's all because of all that time. No, and I think that that's important. I mean, see what they're going through. You see what they're struggling with. And like you said, they don't want to come to you with a weakness. Sometimes we don't even want to take our weaknesses to God.
Exactly.
So if we ignore it, we maybe think that it will go away. But I can say that has tremendously, in this season of our life, affected how we're doing. Is me seeing what he needs and praying for him relentlessly.
Right.
And we just had a situation the other day. He blew my mind. He handled it and with such grace. And I was just like, oh my gosh, the glory of God. That is all the glory of God. 10 years ago, I don't know where we would have been, but it would not have been that outcome. And it was fantastic. And I'm not taking credit for that. It was just, I have been praying that he is, led with his heart and not his emotions, and led with his brain and not his emotions. And I think it, like you said, as men, the conquer tendencies in them can overcome, and it's testosterone, and it's the beating of the chest, and they just want to take care of every situation and sometimes not surrender themselves. So you have to step in that position. You have to pray for them and just hope that they're doing the same for you, or express the need that needs done for you. Say, hey, listen, if you don't want to talk to me about what I need to improve with, maybe that makes you uncomfortable, because I don't care how long you've been married. Honesty is hard with anybody.
Exactly. It is.
So you never know how it's going to be taken. And it could be taken different ways on different days. But say, hey, listen, if you see that I'm struggling with something, lift me up in prayer. You don't even have to mention it. Just lift me up in prayer and just go from there. Maybe start the conversation there and let it roll out however it rolls out.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've said to Jerry, just pray for me. Please just pray for me in this situation. Pray for me in this situation.
Yeah.
Because, we need to do that for each other. We need to be our prayer covering for each other.
I totally
because
agree.
who else is going to do it?
And who else knows you as well as your husband does?
Nobody.
Nope. God, that's the only one.
Any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I think that's pretty much it, but I just don't want anybody to ever feel hopeless.
Right.
Your voice is your most powerful tool. In a calm manner, you should be able to speak to your spouse about anything. It may not always be pleasant, and I think that you have to be willing to accept that they may say things that you don't appreciate at the time.
Exactly. You can't control
how they feel
or what they say. The only thing that you have within your control is what you say. So if you say nothing, then don't expect anything to change.
And I don't know about you, but I cannot say how many times we've had those conversations. You get to that boiling point and you're like, okay, we need to sit down. And you do. You lay it out all on the table and then you move on. You take everything that they say into consideration. You work on yourself. You work on your marriage. You pray for the other person. You pray for yourself. And you go. You move on.
Right. You move on. And you don't get emotionally stunted by that conversation.
No.
Because you can't. You need to think of it just like at work when you get an evaluation.
I was just going to say that, an employer evaluation.
Right. Because it's just like check, check, check. You need to work on these things. You're like, okay, boss, these are the things. But when our husband says, here's these things that I think you need to work on, then we can't take it as an emotional thing. We need to realize, okay, this is just a thing I need to work on. Think of it like a boss telling an employee, and for him too, you're telling them things too.
Why are we so easily offended by our spouse saying something but not our employer? That makes no sense to me.
They don't think we're perfect.
You mean I'm not doing the dishes enough?
I think because of our connection, I think that's what it is. We want
expectation. You think that everything's just going to be perfect. In a workplace that it's not. You don't know that person on that level. Right. But, I think that there's nothing that shouldn't be discussed.
Right. I agree.
Even if it hurts.
Yep. And that's really important. Even if it hurts, because it'll sting for a while. But if you don't discuss it, then the wedge between you will just get wider and wider, and that's not where you want to go.
No, not at all.
So thanks for joining us today on The Whole House, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
We're so glad you could join us here for the Whole House podcast. Please subscribe, and if you give us a review, we might pick our favorite and send you a prize. Please remember to like the Whole House Facebook page and follow us on Instagram at _whole_house. And please sign up with your email on our website, thewholehouse.org, to be notified when new things are happening here at the Whole House. Thanks so much for listening.